everyone, I am going to start a new tutorial and I'm pleasantly surprised and excited to also tell everyone that I have decided to expand my tutorials into Photoshop, InDesign, along with more Illustrator tutorials. I just figured, if you're using the Illustrator tutorials, which really have been going over well, that you probably need just as much help or could benefit just as much from learning the other two main programs within the Adobe Creative Suite. So I'm going to be showing you, walking you through how, the basic understanding of how layers work within Photoshop, because that is a big part of Photoshop and you will probably use it or need to use it in every single time you use or create a document in Photoshop. So, and of course, like always, I'm not going to go super in depth. I really try to just focus my tutorials on the things you need to know. I mean, obviously, these are all just very in-depth and deep programs with multiple layers and stuff. I mean, even though I've been using it for almost 15 years, there are still tons of things that I don't know about it, that I don't use. So I don't want to confuse anyone. I just want to keep things simple and show you what you need to know. So let's get started on layers today. And I'm going to use one of my clients' projects as an example because one of the main things I use Photoshop for in my freelance business is website mockups. I create mockups in Photoshop because it's the easiest way for my programmer to pull the assets that she needs when she goes in and actually types in the code to create the website. She can pull my images and graphics right from this layered Photoshop file because it's all in separate little pieces that she can grab. So, but this, I mean, the layers format or layers overall, like I said, you're going to be using it in most every single document that you create or piece of art that you create inside Photoshop, no matter what you're creating it for. It doesn't have to be for a website. So I am going to get my layers palette here front and foremost so we can kind of dissect this and so you get a better understanding of what layers, how they work, because it can be really confusing when you're first starting out. And if you don't have your layers panel open already, you can find it under Window and then Layers. The quick key is F7. So as you can see, right now I have a bunch of layers. And if I scroll down my document, you can see this is what I want this particular page to look like after it's all coded and stuff, which I don't know how to code. So I do the mock-up. And let's just start by saying every piece of this is on its own layer. So if I go over to my layer panel and this little eyeball next to the name of the layer lets you toggle between seeing what's on that layer or hiding what's on that layer. So this one that I have called button is going to be down here, my button at the very bottom. If I click the eye, it hides it. I mean, obviously it's still there, it's just hidden so you can't see it. And if I had done this right, I usually try to layer order my layers in the order that they appear on the page. So the button should be way down here at the bottom. But as you can see, because I put it down at the bottom, I'm going to rename this background. My white background layer needs to be at the very bottom because when you're thinking layers, you want to think slides, or like a stack of papers, a stack of transparent papers. So you want to stack your layers in the order that you want them to be visible. So if you have a layer of just your background color, that should always be on the bottom, because that's going to be behind every other single piece of artwork. And then you can tell that some of my layers have a T instead of a thumbnail, and when there's a T, that means that it's a text layer, and it's an editable text layer. So if I click on this first one that says not sure where to start, I can go down to that text, and with my text tool I can highlight that and I can retype the text if I want. So a text layer is fully editable. Okay, what else? You can also, well, let me move some of these layers around so you can see how they stack. Probably the best way to show you that is with the white background layer. So my layer here that I just clicked on, the gray box, is this gray box that has the title typed on top of it. But if I move my white background above my gray box layer, my white background is now going to cover up anything that's below it. So the gray box, this text layer, my 6-step process graphic, and my button are all covered up now by the white box. And you can see my text layer, not sure where to start, that's right here, is still above, and our all-inclusive step process is a white header, so you can't see it, but it's still up above. And my logo and header are up above too. That's why those are the only things you can see. If I move my white background layer down to the bottom where it should be, then my other elements appear. And that's the same for any of these. Anytime you move them around, similar to inside Illustrator, when you send something to the back or bring something to the front, you need to do that in Photoshop by rearranging your layers. So what's ever last on your layer list will be at the bottom of your design elements. Another cool thing that you can do when you have a document that has multiple layers like this, I mean, it can get pretty tricky to organize everything. So you can actually create a layer group. And you can see, if you look at my layer, my first layer up here is a layer group because it's a folder that represents a group. And if I expand by clicking this arrow, it shows me everything that is in that layer group. And you can see that my icons, or my thumbnail and my T icon, is now indented a little bit because it means it's inside this group. So when I'm doing website mock-ups, I like to group things by the sections. So everything that's in this header section is inside this logo header group of layers. My text, and there's my logo, and my whole navigation is up there, and then the main image photo is also part of that. And in order to do that, I'm just going to close this because this one's already created, but let's say that we wanted to put the rest of our layers, meaning everything else below the header, into a layer group. We would select, well, first we have to make the group. If we go up to this little button at the top of our panel, click, and you can do a new group right here. And then it asks you to name that group, and we'll put, we'll call it main body elements. I'm not going to label it. I don't need the opacity to change. I just want that folder, so I hit OK. And there is our folder. So now we're going to select whatever layers we want to put in that group, and I'm going to do everything but the background. I'm going to select all these layers by holding my Shift key down, and then I'm going to click and drag so they go inside the folder. And now you can see they kind of indented in, and if I close the arrow, they're all organized nicely inside of that. Works really good. And let's just say that we wanted to create a new layer. You can create a new layer, a blank layer, going up to that right hand corner again, hitting new layer, and then you can name it whatever you want. Let's just do additional text. Okay, and I want that to be on top of everything, so I'm going to move it all the way to the top. Now I'm just going to, for demonstration purposes, type additional text. And make it really big so that we can see it. There we go. Just put it right there. Excuse me. And then let's say I decided, oh, I guess I don't really want that layer. We can turn it off, can make it invisible, or you can select a layer and get rid of it all completely by hitting the trash button down at the bottom. Yes. And the other thing that gets confusing for people, and I'm going to start a new document to demonstrate this. Whenever you make a new document, of course it's going to be slow for me now, you start out, every time you create an element, type text, or let's see, we'll just do this. It's gonna automatically add a layer every time you type something or every time you copy and paste something. So with a new document, you start out with a background layer, which is locked and you can't do anything with it. So the first thing you want to do is unlock it by double clicking on this. Double click, and you can name that layer if you want. We're just going to call it layer 1. So now it's not locked anymore, now it's fully editable. I'm going to select my standard gray background and I'm going to delete. You'll probably, your default is probably set to white, so same process though. Select everything by doing a Control-A and then you hit delete, and now you have a transparent document. There's no background color. This little gray and white checkerboard means that you have no color behind there. So let's see what happens when I type. I hit my type tool and I'm going to type my name. See what happens over here. It turns to a text layer, and I'm going to type Aaron Gifford. Then I'm going to go to my arrow and I'm going to make that larger by doing a free transform, holding onto the corner, holding my shift key, and I'm going to make it really big. Then I'm going to paste. I want to paste something in here, a different element. So this is a different project I was working on. I'm going to copy this logo and then I'm going to paste it in, and now watch over here on my layer panel. When I do a Control-V, pixels is fine. See that? It automatically added another layer. So I'm going to enlarge this, place it right there, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to name my layer Common Man Logo. So I have two layers now. My logo is on this layer and I can toggle on and off, and my text is on this layer. Now I'm going to move my text behind my logo, and it's going behind my logo because my text layer is on the bottom. If I wanted that text to be in front of my logo, I would just click and drag and move my layer 1 to the top. Now let's add another element. And okay, so I was just going to make a rectangle. So if I use my rectangle tool and I draw a rectangle, I'm on my text layer. If I do a, let's see, Oh, see, and it won't let me do an object on my text layer. Oh, close. It won't let me because it's a text layer. You can't have pixels and text on the same layer. So I need to make a new layer. New layer, we'll call it rectangle. There we go. And now if we go up to edit and we do a fill, we will fill it with the foreground color, which is red. There we go. And if we do a Control D so that it's not selected anymore, we still have complete control over this object. And again, right now it's at the top of the layer board, so it's going to go in front of everything. But if I move this to the bottom, I just drug my rectangle layer all the way to the bottom, now it's behind. So think of your different layers as each individual piece of artwork that you're compiling into one. When you are ready to, when you are done with your whatever you're creating, the only way to save your artwork and keep all your editable layers is to save it in Photoshop format, PSD. If you save it just like this and keep the PSD Photoshop extension, you will be able to reopen that document and your layers will be intact. It will be just like you left it. However, keep in mind, PSD is a native format to Photoshop. It is only open, you can only open it with Photoshop. And when you're designing, chances are you need it in a different format if you're going to upload it to a website or send it somewhere to be printed. Any other scenario you can think of, you need it in a different, I mean, it won't be able to, they won't be able to use a PSD file. So in order to what's called flatten your layers and make it into just one composite image, when you're all done, you can go over here and then down towards the bottom is flatten image. You can flatten it and now it's all one composite image. You can no longer move the pieces around. So my best advice, I always save a PSD file and then I do a save as and I save it in whatever format is needed wherever I'm sending it to or whatever I'm using it for. I save it in as a second document. But I always keep that Photoshop layered file in order to go back in and make edits if I need to. Okay, there is something else that caught my eye when I was saving that. Oh, there's some other tips in here that you can do. I am going to go to my history and unflatten my image. And then if we click on this menu again up in the top of the layers, there are some different options. I think I have to have a layer selected though. Yep. You can copy a layer, you can duplicate a layer, delete a layer. There's all sorts of commands in here. You can lock a layer if you want to make sure that something doesn't get deleted or you just don't want it to move around. You can lock that layer. Right now I can move this logo, but if I go in and lock the layer, then why didn't that work? Lock layers. Oh, here, you have to pick what you want to lock. I want to lock the position so I can't move it. Might as well just do it all. Hit OK, and now I cannot move that layer. The little lock shows up over here, and you can, looks like you can toggle that on or off. I just turned it off by accident, but so that's another thing you can do. Okay, I think I'm getting to the point of starting to confuse people or giving too much information at once. So I think we will just leave it there for now. And a little intro to layers and how they work. As always, my email box is open. Ask me questions, send me ideas for new tutorials, anything you're stuck with, just let me know. And I will hopefully get some more Photoshop and some more InDesign tutorials going shortly. Thanks for watching.